All right, good evening and welcome everybody to our first virtual quarterly consortium of the 24-25 school year. As you saw in the announcement, this is going to be a RefReps presentation, and we're changing things up a little bit. Kyle and I were emailing back and forth, and we decided we were going to do kind of more of a conversational. I'll have some questions for him, and then certainly if you all have a burning question you need to ask him, we want it to be a little bit conversational, but we'll start off. Kyle Armstrong from RefReps is our presenter tonight, and as most of you know, the NFHS and RefReps have been working together now for a couple of years, and they, of course, are doing incredible things within the high school space as well as the intercollegiate space with curriculum for officiating for high school sports. And over the past 18 months, they've completely blown up, and it's been amazing to see that growth and progression as they've continued to develop and improve their project or their product. Just as every time I think that they can't do more, they do more, and it's pretty cool. So we've got an AD, former, now retired AD on, who is part of RefReps with Taunton, Massachusetts. He was on with us last year, so it's good to see him back on. It looks we've got a number of our state associations on tonight as well. So we're going to do some catch up. We're going to talk about some new stuff going on, and I'll start with just a few intro questions for Kyle. So Kyle, for somebody who's watching this of course is being recorded, if they're hearing about RefReps for the very first time, what would be your 280 character or 30-second elevator speech for what RefReps is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're an education technology company that focuses on sports officiating education. So we provide curriculum, coursework, support materials for high schools, colleges, organizations to teach sports officiating as a class. But the primary area where we've grown the most is in high schools. We have kids all over the country go to math, science, English, and sports officiating class now.
When, why, and how did RefReps get started?
So really, kind of the short version of that, during the pandemic, we had been watching all the trends. We've been in the industry quite a while, and we knew what was happening. The average age was going up and people were quitting and all of those kind of things. So we just really wanted to find a way to fill that gap and really infuse youth into the industry. And I had an idea, and I called Nick Brigatti, who's on with us tonight. And I said, hey, do you think you could build like a online course for baseball, and let's just see what it does? Yeah, I can build that. And the rest was kind of history from there. The idea originally was to help with the shortage, and then it just has kind of grown from that.
It certainly has kind of grown. It's pretty amazing. Speaking of growth, in what ways, since the first inception, since the first iteration of RefReps, how has it really grown and expanded over the past couple of years?
So we really initially went to market in August of 2022 with the curriculum and the coursework and kind of the early version of what we've got now. And when we launched just a little over 2 years ago, 2 years and a month ago, we launched with 79 high schools, and we had around 100 and change just organizations that were teaching classes with us. And now 2 years later, we have, I wrote this one down, 647 high schools that are teaching with us at present, up from 79 2 years ago. And we have over 1,027 total organizations in 43 different states and internationally that are teaching with us at this point.
That's pretty exciting. Just to see how it's grown and developed. And as I was talking about, there's been some enhancements, and I know that you all had launched your version 3.0 this late summer and kind of leading into the school year. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those new features and what state associations that are working with you or local associations that are working with you can expect as they come into the platform this school year?
So what's been really exciting, when we first started, it started like right where I said with Nick. We just wanted to try this online course that could make learning to become a sports official a little bit more accessible, lower barriers to entry. You just get online, study at your own pace. And then we kind of got into this, oh, there's an opportunity here with schools. And so really over the last year, it was working with people like Mark Ottavianelli and his school and doing focus groups and really learning about we were really great from the start about the officiating education component, but now how do we really cater this and tailor this to educators, instructors that maybe they don't have any experience in sports officiating, maybe they don't have any experience in sports, but how do we set them up for success so that they could teach this class? The number one barrier that we found to schools being willing to take a chance on a sports officiating class was, well, we don't have a referee that teaches here. And it was like, okay, well, that's what we've done over the last year. How can we fill that gap to where you don't need to be a referee? So a lot of features to enhance the experience for instructors. What we talk about with new schools coming in, we added a lot of materials, support materials for school instructors primarily. You could log in to our platform on the first day of class in a high school, never having looked at it before. You click 2 buttons and start reading off the screen, and you sound like you've taught sports officiating for 30 years. I mean, it is just all laid out perfectly for you. So a lot of enhancements to the curriculum and the materials, and then really helping assess the educational experience for a learner, a lot of streamlined things for that to show learner growth. So one of the things we did since last year that's really, really neat, and it's really, really telling when you're in the officiating space, the first thing you ever do when you log into a course with us as a learner is, our thing is kind of point of view video. We use point of view video to help people see the game through the eyes of the officials. So the first thing you do when you log into a course is we have a challenge for you, and it's 15 plays from the perspective of the referee, and you have to make the call. And we give a little prompt that pops up on the screen before it. Says, hey, if you don't do very well on this, don't be shocked. Most people don't on their first try. 15 plays from the perspective of the official. You have a 1.5 seconds to make the call. What's been fascinating over the last year of tracking that data, 40% of people, 40% of the calls that could be made in those challenges, people don't even respond to, because it's just like brain overload. Like, I have no idea what's happened here. And so things like that, where we can really measure that growth and just streamline this for schools so that they can just get more kids in and more kids excited about officiating.
That was great. Something, and I wanted to save this to the end, but I'm just too excited about it, so I'm going to talk about it now. So anybody who is on this Zoom knows that the NFHS has had some struggles in the area of NFHS All Access, and we recently signed our agreement with Refreps to be our savior, for lack of a better word. They will be taking over the All Access, but we won't be calling that anymore. We don't know what it's going to be called yet, but they will be taking over our rules app moving into the next school year. So Kyle, just could you talk kind of high level about some of the visions and ideas as far as what you have? I mean, right now we basically, as you know, have a PDF that people can search and look at, and that's kind of where it ends. Can you talk about what your vision is for that, and the enhancements that you'll be making to the rules app, whatever we decide to call it?
This is one of the things that I'm most excited about. I think the tie-in between the educational components that we're doing, and then, I think the most important resource for any referee is that rule book, and giving, we talk about the All Access app and we talk about the digital rule books, but what we're really envisioning this for is truly a tool and a platform, an experience for sports officials. So some of the things that we're working on are enhancements to that, where people can get in and search terms, build out lists of bookmarks. So if there's something that I reference often in the rule book, I can build out a whole list of that material that I can just get back to quick anytime I would need it. being able to highlight and make notes and interact with others through this, I don't know what to say, the rule book app,
whatever this thing is.
thing that we're going to name it, but really making it an experience and a tool where education can take place, being able to have dynamic content embedded in the rulebook, videos, links, documents, any sort of material that can help officials better navigate the rulebook, but also enhance that experience when they're in there. One of the things that I envision us working on when a learner at any level, an adult or a student, takes a course with us, it works them through the rule book in the way that we do it and helps them understand the rules. But then we use, again, that point of view video to show what that rule means in practice and how you would adjudicate that rule. And so those are the kind of things that we can also bring to the rule book. Here is the rule book coming to life so that you can see that rule in practice, on a court, on a field, and really start to understand it that way. And we have a lot of ideas about ways that we can more effectively distribute the rule book, make sure that it's much easier to access and it's much more available to people. And I think it's going to be something that, as we start to roll it out and you start to see the platform and understand what it can do, I think that especially maybe a lot of people talk about, there's always going to be a paper rule book and there always will be a paper rule book. But I think this is going to start to shift some perception that, wow, this digital thing is powerful and effective and it's efficient. And I'm just really, really excited about this project. It's going to be a good one.
I don't know who's more excited, you or me. I'm definitely excited about it. And as Kyle and I have spoken through this process, there have been times where I was fearful that he was going to never want to return my calls again, but he's been more than receptive, and he and his team have been outstanding to work with, and really, working with every department in the NFHS staff to make sure that publications is good, finance is good, technology is good, because there's a lot of moving parts within our publications process that we wanted to make sure our rules editors were okay, and we're going to continue to have meetings internally. But thank you to Refreps for undertaking this project, because it's big, and because we know what your platform looks like, we have that sense of comfort knowing that it's going to be something that is functional and interactive and exciting and more than a searchable PDF. So we're really excited about that. And some of you on this Zoom may be involved in some testing of that, so be on the lookout for some inquiries from us asking for help of, hey, try to break this, and see what you could do to help us through that, because we want to have something that there's no question that it's going to work. So I don't think there is one anyway, but just in case, we want to make sure you've tried everything you can to break it before we release it. So you can tell I'm really, really excited about that, as is Kyle and his team. So we appreciate that. So Kyle, as you've gone through the whole process with your platform and the courses and the evolution of all of this, how many individuals right now have completed the courses? And then do you know that percentage that continue on in their officiating journey?
So the second part of that's something that we really need help from the states, and a lot that are on today, and I'll get back to that. But I just checked before we got on. 2 years ago, when we launched with right around 1,200 users. So 2 years and about a month exactly, 1,200 users. Today, we're at 27,458. So that's 27,458 prospective sports officials. The thing that's really exciting about that is there have been 35,697 courses assigned. So that's individuals taking multiple sports. They're learning multiple sports, potentially licensing in multiple sports. So in 2 years, from 1,200 to 36,000-ish prospects. And the other thing that's really, really neat, we run about 92% of the individuals who have started courses with us today have finished them.
Oh, wow.
The other 8% are just, I'm sure they're in the process. They're working their way through. So we have a really high percentage rate of those that complete. But the thing that's really neat, we gather data from individuals when they complete courses with us. We ask them confidence questions. How confident are you that you can apply your knowledge of the rules based on your learning experience? How confident are you that you understand positioning and things like that? The other one, and the big one that we ask, is based on your learning experience with us, now that you've completed a course, have you either started officiating sports, or are you working through the process towards that? It's kind of a convoluted question, but it's a complex question, because initially we were going to ask, have you licensed? Well, in a lot of states, if you're a high school student, maybe you can't.
Right.
You don't need to, because you're only going to work youth games. So we kind of landed on that. Have you started, or are you working through the process of getting started? And 87.6% of individuals who complete courses with us intend to move on. So, I mean, that's the thing. When we really started talking to state partners and, inquiring, if people take these courses, what percent would you want to see actually pursue officiating? And across the board, it was 30 to 35%. If we get 30 to 35% of them, we'll be in great shape. And we're at 87.6. What I can't tell, and what I wish I could, is, okay, how many of them have moved on to license?
Right.
That's just so hard because there's so many moving parts. But in a state like Ohio, we have really good data on that. But it's tough because of the way, different states do different things. But
Not
really,
any names, Bo Rung.
yeah, right.
No, that's great data. And that, I mean, to go from 1,200 users to almost 28,000 users, that's unbelievable. And the cool thing is, all of us are in this, in this industry and in this part of the state high school association world. That's incredible to think about, the number of potential officials, in some cases, the number of current officials who are being educated, who are working on their craft. And that's something that's so important, because there are areas where there isn't a lot of training and there isn't a lot of education, and that's not anybody's fault. It's just trying to figure out how to reach, sometimes when there's geographic difficulties or those sorts of things. So to know the reach is expanding so much, that's a testament to what you're doing, to what state associations are doing, school districts are doing, and the fact that people are putting officiating as a priority. So that's an exciting thought, because that hasn't always been the case.
Well, and I think that's a huge point you make there, because there's a lot of familiar faces in states that we're working with here, but none of anything I just shared would have happened without them all being willing to take a chance. We were the new kids on the block, and they didn't have to take a chance on us, and they did. And what's exciting to me when we think about that, for a long time, we've learned it. Every state kind of has their own nuances in how they do things, whether it's licensing or training or whatever it may be. And the thing that I think is really cool is we've got schools and students in Washington that we're partnered with who are learning officiating through RefReps. We have schools and students in Southern California down by Newport Beach who are learning officiating through RefReps. We have schools and students right in the Keys in Florida who are learning officiating through RefReps. We have officials associations in New Hampshire who are learning officiating through RefReps, and then fill in all the middle. And most states in there have people learning that way. So right now there's 27,000 people who all learned from a common denominator. They could go in between any one of those states and exactly where they're coming from, exactly where they've started, exactly what they know and what they don't know, exactly where they're going to excel and where they're going to struggle. All of that. And I think for maybe the first time ever, we can say that there's 27,000 people nationally who have one common base of knowledge that they can all work off together.
And that's huge, because we always hear consistency. We always hear about, well, it's not consistent. And even sometimes, in a state office, when you'll hear in your own state, well, we don't call it that way up here, or we don't call it that way over here. And it's like, wait a second, it's the same rule book, it's the same mechanics manual. Why are we doing things so differently? So I think that knowing that at least 27,000 officials are looking at things the same way, I mean, that just goes to show that there are modules that can be used. There are ways to instruct where people are reading from the, reading from the same sheet of music, if you will. That's really exciting. So, one of the things I get asked a lot about from both state association, local association, and school perspective is, oh, I don't have the time to implement this. This is, I don't have the bandwidth. Like, I'm doing so much. I know our state association people, they are in charge of officials and 94 other things. Talk to us a little bit about that process. Like, what is the lift as far as if you're a state association leader, a local association leader, or even a classroom teacher whose school district is allowing this curriculum?
I'll start with the classroom side, and then if any of the state people want to jump in on the other side, that's fine. But from a classroom perspective, I would say, Mark, probably the most difficult thing is just getting approvals from administration. Now, when you've got someone like Mark that's super passionate about it and pushes that ball forward, that's easy. There's a lot of times our team gets involved. I mean, we go straight through curriculum and instruction, and we work with them to get these approvals. We work with state departments of education directly. I mean, Ohio is one of the major approvals that we've earned. We reached out to Doug Ute in Ohio. We said, hey, there's a credential that we want to try for. Can you make a connection? I think, Bo, he probably sent one email, got us connected with the right people, and our team did the rest. And we got a huge industry credential for workforce and employability. And I mean, I don't think they would argue we did all the work for that for the state. I mean, we made it all happen, and we couldn't have done it without the connection, obviously, but we're willing to put in that kind of work. From the state side, every once in a while, we're going to ask you to send an email, and we send you the template of the email, and you copy and paste and hit send, and we kind of do the rest for you. We have learned how to streamline this, and we have learned the most effective places where we can plug in our team, and then we've built the team around that. We have career educators that specialize in curriculum, and we can just plug them into a state and work towards course approvals or work towards career and technical education approvals. We can do all those kind of things for you. So from a state that maybe isn't working with us, that has been concerned about that, Bo, I don't know. There's not a whole lot you need to do from the association side.
If I could speak to that, I'd like to, Dana.
Ooh, yes, absolutely. I saw your camera come on. I was like, yay, here he comes.
Come on. Well, I was sleeping. I'll speak to your question about, you don't have a lot of time and you got a lot of things on your plate. I think that's the reason to go with this. I mean, that's the reason we went with it. We didn't have the resources to get the type of volume of people involved, and we had to find someone to help us get that volume involved. And again, Kyle and his team have been phenomenal. When we've worked well together, but when they've needed a connection, we've given them a connection, and they're very low maintenance after you give them the connection. They go after it if they need something from us. It's a priority for us to help them because we know they'll finish the deal. And I think that's the key in this is figure out where you want to go. We started in we wanted our classes available 24/7, and it's grown to we've got schools involved, we've got our state education involved. All of that is just a growth out of it once you get going.
Bo, just while you're awake and you have your camera on, Are you using it for just new officials, or are you using it for new returning? Like what population are you using it for?
No, great question. And you know, we started out with everything is new officials, but our next big initiative for us and my staff is retention and how do we get people to the next level. You know, you get your feet wet, you get in there, you're starting to figure out what's going on. How do we get them to the next level? Because our regional and state officials are older. We need them to be younger. And so how do we get them to the next level? And that's what we've talked with Kyle about in a lot of different ways. We use this, Kyle's and his team have made us things for our reinstatement for people coming back to officiating. That's another big area. You got people that have left. We want to come back. How hard is it? You know, what have I forgotten? Now I have a reinstatement class. It's shorter, but it gets them involved. It gets them going right away and gets them back in faster. And then the next thing is we just need to get some things going on how do we improve that 1, 2, 3, 4 year official that gets to be in another level. So yeah, we look at it as I think it's kind of the tip of the iceberg thing. We're just gonna keep going until Kyle hates us.
I feel like we're all doing that with Kyle a little bit. When is he gonna stop taking my calls? But Bo, thank you for that, because I think you hit on some really good points. One of the things that I was thinking about is, as state association people, a lot of times you'll get those transfer officials. And I don't know how many times when I was in a state office, you'd get somebody who would be like, oh, I was an SEC basketball official. You know, turns out it was just a guy who happened to officiate AAU, where there is also SEC basketball being played. So having something, a course in place where you can kind of test the baseline knowledge of someone, I think is super important. So there might be some avenues with transfer officials where they could take that course and you can find out, do they really know what they're talking about, or have they just tried to sell me a bill of goods and I have no other way to test their knowledge. So I love the way you guys are using it. I'm looking forward to hearing how you kind of check the steps of officials and all of that as you progress. So Bo, thank you for sharing that. Richard Pearson, are you available where you can unmute and speak? You've been lighting up the chat, so I'm just gonna let you talk.
Well, I don't mean to jump in, but
No,
Mark's here.
you
Mark
need
can
to
talk
jump
about.
in.
Well, I was just going to say what I said at the end there was just to make the connections with our schools. I actually worked over the past 2 weeks to really kind of check in with our schools that are kind of doing it, see how they're doing. And I'm actually visiting a classroom tomorrow. And in Massachusetts, I said this summer when I spoke, Dana, that I'm fortunate that in Massachusetts I can get around the state pretty quickly in a very short period of time. So it's going to be my presence tomorrow when I walk into the class. I see the 15 students. I thank them for getting involved. I give them something, a memento to say, hey, you're in the ranks now. Let's go, right? So kind of putting a face from the state association with where we want to go. And that's what I've really tried to do. And then over the past couple of weeks, I've just been prodding the schools that are looking into it and using my voice and my exposure that I know that says, hey, principal and AD, where are you? Where are you? And as Kyle knows, it's not instantaneous overnight. It may take a semester, it may take a year. But if I can put my face in there and say, we know this works and I'm in it, and let's go.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. So Kyle, one of the things as we're talking about making connections, I know one of the groups that you've spoken with, and I think I want to speak out of turn. I think you've signed on with NIAAA.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because one of the things that we've tried to do from the NFHS standpoint is really involve athletic administrators with, treatment of officials and hospitality of officials and all of those sorts of things. We have a really good relationship with NIAAA. And I know that Refreps has also connected with them. Can you tell us what that NIAAA kind of partnership looks like?
Yeah, I think, like, big picture, kind of looking at where my career in this industry started and where it's at now, it's sort of what you said earlier. Officiating is taking such a different place in the world right now, like where NIAAA is going, hey, we got to get behind this. We got to help. We got to be involved. We got to promote. officiating, not ref reps necessarily, but officiating, and make sure that they have the resources that they need. And so that's been really big for us, just getting the word out through them to athletic directors, because obviously we all know that they are the ones that are on the front line of this pinch of the officiating shortage. For us, in our business model, that only goes so far. Athletic directors only go so far, because ultimately we have to get in with principals and curriculum and instruction, but the athletic directors are so important to championing what needs to happen to fix this problem. And so that's where, like Mark at Taunton, having that voice that can say, hey, there's a need and I feel it every day. And I'm passionate about bringing this to administration to get this going, but then having an organization like NIAAA who's now doing that same thing. I mean, that's a big, big deal. And, alongside you all and some of the other ones that we're working with, it really is just putting the perception, there's such a shift towards a positive light towards officiating and the fact that it needs support.
Kyle, Dana, can I jump in on that? And to add, all those people that you mentioned are very, very vital to this whole effort. You've got one group, your communities. You have to make those connections with the people in the community. Your travel ball, your youth parks and recreations. We were fortunate in Taunton here in Massachusetts that we had those connections with AAU basketball, travel basketball, local park and recs, local soccer people. So we were able to make those connections with those leaders of those organizations and get our kids to work. Now they become role models. Our second and third grade basketball team knows the two officials who are working the game play at Taunton High School. Now they want to go to the game. Our middle school kids know that the high school kids are officiating. They want to go to the games. High school students become role models, and it goes down the cycle where they're role models to the middle school students, and the middle school students are role models to elementary students. And they want to come and be part of that as they go along. So that's the other major piece that we've experienced.
That's excellent. Talking about, building community around it. That's fantastic. And you're right, because we always talk about, as a high school athlete, you're a role model for the kids that are in elementary school, but we never put in terms of you're officiating their games now. And now those kids are going to go watch you when you're playing. So what an awesome example, Mark. Thank you for that. Speaking of organizations, Kyle, have you had any kind of unexpected schools or organizations that have started teaching classes with RefReps?
So we've got a few military bases that we work with in South Korea and Germany that are teaching classes with us. We partnered with an organization called Global Sports Partners. We had our first activation with them last week in Ghana. They went and put on a baseball, kind of teaching the athletic side of baseball, but now they want to pull in the umpiring side. So there's young people in Ghana that are going through RefReps courses right now. But the coolest one that I'm really excited about, and I think it'd probably be Cal and Thomas, they may be the only ones who have heard of this. We'll see. We have a high school now I'm going to mess it up, and they probably actually know how to pronounce it. I shouldn't have exposed myself here, but I think it's Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands. Kwajalein Senior High School in the Marshall Islands teaches a class with us. There's a military base there. But if whether you know geography or not, so we're in Indiana, 4 or 5 hour flight to LA, 5-hour flight to Hawaii, and then the Marshall Islands is way past that, out in the middle of nothing. But they just found out about us, I think through a Google search, and they wanted to teach with us. And one of the neatest things I learned, they play tackle football in the Marshall Islands, but you are not allowed to tackle there because there's coral in the sand. And if you tackle, it'll rip your body up. So that's a interesting rule modification to tackle football in the Marshall Islands. It's not actually tackle football.
That sounds like a Jeopardy question. That's
Right?
that's pretty fascinating. I had no idea. So be on the lookout. When we were at the NASO summit this past summer, we got approached by a group of breakdancing people. So they may, you never know, they may come into the fold after it became an Olympic sport. So you never know what's going to happen. So you've talked a lot about accomplishments. You've talked a lot about what RefReps has done over all of the things that you've done over the past few years. If you had to pick one thing that you all have accomplished that you're the most excited or the most proud of, what would that be?
A good question. I think it's special to me personally, but then I think what we learned from this was pretty fascinating. We're based out of Indianapolis area, and so in February, the NBA All-Star Game was here, and then we had first couple rounds of the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament that were here. So it was, yeah, and Hoosier State basketball, right? So we got contacted by the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, which is the largest children's museum in the world. And like, if you're not from around here, it's worth a trip. It's very cool. It's a very special place. I've been taking my kids there for 15 years almost now, and it's just a really special place. But they wanted to do some sort of an exhibit display about sports officiating. They have an entire section of the museum that's dedicated to sports, and it's so over the top. I mean, football, baseball, hockey, racing, they have all these interactive exhibits that's so cool. And they wanted to do something about sports officiating again, like putting sports officiating into a positive light. How cool is that? So they got a hold of us. We put in an interactive exhibit for about 8 weeks down at the Children's Museum. And it was just really neat. It was really cool to go there and be a part of that. My kids like get to be involved in that. So that was really, really special. But then what we had was an exhibit, and we have a very large 55-inch interactive touchscreen. It's like a giant iPad, massive iPad. And so what we created for that specifically is we would use our point of view video. So people would come up to this giant kiosk and they'd see a basketball play from the perspective of the official, and then they had to make a call. And what was absolutely fascinating was you'd watch this play, you knew it was about 15 seconds long, and we presented you with 2 options. Travel, double dribble, out of bounds, whatever. 2 options that you had. We had over 5,000 individuals play this game on this kiosk, okay? 5,000 people with 2 options in front of them to choose from. And when we gathered we tracked all the data in the back end. And by the time we got done, people made the correct call 53% of the time. They started with a 50-50 chance, and they were only 3% better than that. So what ultimately then came out of that, just being a cool special experience, it's allowed us to tell some really neat stories. It took people 3.6 seconds to just click an answer on the screen, and they were wrong 47% of the time. So what we've started talking about is, just imagine you're a basketball referee. You have no idea something's going to happen. You certainly don't have just a couple options to choose from. And then it takes you you blow the whistle. It takes you 3.6 seconds to decide what the heck just happened. And then you're wrong almost half the time. Think of how that would go over. Now put into perspective that people are accurate. I mean, the NBA, they're accurate 96% of the time. And we're yelling at them about how bad they are. Come on. If we can really use data to prove that people have no idea what they're talking about. And it's pretty special to be able to use that to educate people as well.
That's great data. Wow. I bet officials really wish that they only had 2 choices.
Right.
That would make their job so much easier all the time. So kind of one of my last questions for you would be, over the next 5 to 7 years, what are you, from your desk, from the organization of RefReps, from you personally, what are you the most concerned about for the officiating industry over the next 5 to 7 years?
So I think we're very data driven. I mean, I've talked a lot about data. I'm kind of a data nerd, but I think it tells really important stories. And so I didn't even realize this, but 2 years ago, I went to San Antonio and I did a presentation for the NCAA. And I talked about the 2018 survey of the National Association of Sports Officials gathered the data. The average age of a high school sports official is 53 years old. Well, when I mentioned that in the presentation, the gentleman from the NCAA said, do you know what the average age was in the 1970s? And I said, actually, I have no idea. And he said it was 26. So the average age of a high school sports official in the 70s was 26. In 2018, it was 53. And then in 2023, when NASO did the follow-up survey, it's up to 57, essentially. 57 years old. So for 5 decades, the average age of a sports official has gone up by 3 decades. That's a problem. I think the biggest thing that concerns me personally, and I don't think that, you know, you released some data recently that numbers in some states are starting to go up, and that's a really good thing. And I don't think it just correlates to us by any means. But I think in the states where we're really, really strong, the thing that worries me is we're going to start to get some really false positive data. We're going to see numbers start to go up big time and fast up the hockey stick. But what we're not taking into account is that average age is 57. In 5 years, they're 62. In 7 years, they're 64. They're working 3, 4, 5 nights a week, multiple games a day just to cover the games that we've got. So we're going to start to see numbers tick up, and then all of a sudden it's going to drop off a cliff, like rapidly off a cliff. And so the thing that we're trying to evangelize, there's a lot of good people. NFHS is doing good work. NIAAA is doing good work. A lot of organizations doing good work. But I think where we've got a really strong opportunity for the industry and us personally is we can build that young foundation. I mean, we have unlocked that. We can do it. And so what I worry about is if we're not doing that in states or nationally, when this drop happens, because it's coming, there's going to be nothing down there to catch it. And so we had a webinar that we did with Utah today, and we were talking about some individuals out there who are 15 and 19 years old who are really moving up fast in officiating, but they started when they're 12 and 13. By the time they're 25, they're going to have 12 years of experience. Just imagine nationally in your state, if you get like the experience Mark had at Taunton, started with 20 kids, and now they're running 2 sections, around 50 students from 15 to 18 years old. By the time they're 25, they've all got 7 to 10 years of experience. And your state finals games now, it's a 10-year experienced official that's 25 years old. I think there's a good opportunity there, but we've got to build that base.
And Kyle, it's funny you were talking about data, and I know you're a data nerd, and I like how you said you're a little bit of one, because I think that's an understatement. But we just got some data from the COS through Dragonfly, just of the people who are registered on the COS. I was kind of excited that they put this together. So there's about 84,000 officials that are in the COS, and they pulled by age, because that was something I was really curious about. So under 25, there's 12,668 officials. 41 to 50, we're at 16,237. So it's like, all right. But if you look at that age range from 26 to 40, there's such a drop off. So 26 to 30, 6,800. 31 to 35, 6,400. 36 to 40, about 7,000. And that, those years where people go on and they start a family, they start a job, or maybe they don't have that flexibility, those numbers just drop off hugely. So we've got to figure out, how do we retain, which you were talking about. And a lot of that can be done through some online instruction, because you have to think about those people who are getting started in their careers, and their boss isn't going to be so forgiving about, all right, you already took off 3 nights this week to officiate games. Now you have to go take these classes, and you're missing more work. So you can start to see some connections and what we can do to retain those numbers and make sure that we stay a little bit younger, or get a little bit younger as an officiating pool. But I just got this like 2 days ago, so I was glad you started talking about ages and all of that, because I was able to share that for the first time. But so how many states or state high school associations have you partnered with now, Kyle?
Formally, like ink on paper partnerships, 27. There's about 5 more that act like partners, just not on paper. So about 32 that we work with very formally, but we've got classes in 43 states. So odds are, I mean, if you're on, whether you're partnered with us or not, somebody's probably teaching one of our classes somewhere in your state.
43 states and the Marshall Islands. Who knew?
In the Marshall Islands.
Kyle, did you have any kind of closing thoughts, and then we'll open it up for Q&A for the last 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, I would say, like, I think the thing that we're most passionate about, and I think the thing that just sort of happened that we never expected, was the way, I mean this, Dana, I've been in this industry a long time, 10, 12, 15 years. And I think 2 things that we're doing very well in particular is we are making sports officiating cool. I mean, these kids, it's like being on our platforms, like being in a video game. It connects, it makes sense. It's fun for them. And that's one thing that I don't really recall much in the past part of my career, like people talking about how fun it is to learn to be an official, learn about officiating. But I think the other thing is just the way that we're shifting people's perception of officiating. If you go to our website, refreps.com/news, you'll find a ton of news articles there. The one that I would encourage everyone to look at, it's from Taunton, and one of the young ladies that took the class there talks about how she has more respect, and she plays the game more respectfully now because she understands how hard the job is. The thing for us is, we know not 100% of these kids that take classes with us are going to become officials, but 10, 20 years from now, they're going to be the parents in the stands that look back just like I did, and they go, grandma's losing her mind over there about how terrible these officials are. And they're going to have the courage to walk over and say, Grandma, have you ever actually tried to be an official? No, I haven't. Well, let me tell you a quick story. It's really hard. Maybe you should just tone it down a little bit because you're wrong. And those things will happen. These young people will be the leaders that change that perception in this industry for the future. I am positive of it.
And that's such a good point, because a lot of the feedback I've gotten and kind of what I've read in some of the articles about RefReps is the empathy that these student athletes are starting to develop for officials. So it used to be they may have a coach who's screaming at officials all the time. So of course their coach is probably right. But as they've taken these courses, they're realizing this isn't that easy, first of all. And secondly, you don't even know the rules. Like, what are you yelling about? So I think, if nothing else, if these students do not go on to officiate, it's not a lost cause, because they've learned how hard it is. They've learned empathy for the officials. They've learned to, correct the behaviors of their teammates, which I know you've had happen before, where it's like, no, you were holding, like that's why the flag was thrown. You were holding. So I think being able to have those people who end up being kind of life coaches for some of the people playing and coaching and watching games, I think that's a really healthy byproduct of what you're doing. Even if we don't gain them as an official, we kind of gain them as an ally, and that's just
exactly, yes,
in this world. So does anybody have any questions for Kyle? Or I know we've got Nick and Braden, both from RefReps, are on with us as well. Any questions for the RefReps team, or comments, thoughts, anything you're doing with RefReps in your state that others need to hear about?
Well, Dana, we're really happy with it out here in New Mexico. We're up to over 10% of our member schools are using this in-person classes right now. We've got a lot of success stories. That key piece is if the teacher standing in front of them is passionate about what they're doing, the kids are going to flock to it. And we're hearing that. We heard it today at a board meeting. So great job, RefReps folks. It's a great product.
Exactly. That has been cool, seeing how some of the schools are doing kind of an on-court, on-field component along with the online curriculum. So I do like that there's people that are doing it kind of hybrid as well, which I think is exciting. So that way it gives the kids the opportunity to get up and run around as well.
That's another thing that I'd add really quickly, kind of with the enhancements of what we did over the last year, really building out that side of it. So again, if you're, whether you're a officiating instructor who's done this for forever, or you're a high school instructor who's teaching this class for the first time, we built a lot of learning activities that allow adults or young people to get out and experience officiating. So one of the things that's a really big deal is high school students that take this class, if they take a full class the way we structure it, they study sports officiating for 18 or 36 weeks every day or every other day for an hour or 2 hours a day. I mean, by the time they're done, they've got hundreds of hours of instruction about what it is, what it means to be a sports official. And when they go out, like with Mark's class, and they officiate just the school's PE soccer match for fun, but they get out there and they get a run and they get a move and they get to see plays, or they work with the PE department to officiate the basketball game in the gym class. But at least they get out and they blow the whistle and they get that confidence. By the time they're out in a real game, it's like, I've seen this 100 times already in an 18-week period. We added up the time that they study officiating, and then you look to the correlation of what traditional training typically takes place. These kids are getting like 10 years of what we all started with. It took us 10 years to get this much training and education, and they're getting it in 18 weeks.
That's amazing.
You make a good point with that. And we had that situation happen where there was a local organization, board doing their training classes, and our kids were right next to that. And like you said, our kids are in class every day for an hour. So they have that more experience, and older, 24, 25, 30-year-olds are taking the test and they don't have any clue what to do compared to how our kids. And the comment was, well, they don't know what they're doing. Well, they haven't been taught. It's not their fault. Our kids have been taught in that class, so they should have that more experience. I think one of the things, and I'd like to thank Richard on behalf of everybody in Massachusetts, his support of this and his work. I mean, every state's different. And as Richard can tell you, he can attest to this. Massachusetts has 107 different sports officiating boards in all the different sports. So that's 107 different chiefs and Indians and all kingdoms and whatever you want to call it. And they all want to do their own thing. And unfortunately for Richard, he's in charge of all those people. But his leadership from the state level and working with us and trying to get us to that next level, where I think our next connection for us in Taunton and in Massachusetts is, how do we connect these kids with those 107 local boards? How do we get them certified? I know they can work. As an athletic director, watching the freshman and JV girls basketball games, I know our kids are 1,000 times better than the two. At one point, no disrespect, but we had two gentlemen that were over 80 years old doing the game because there was no one else. How do we get them to become board members in all those different sports? That's our obstacle right now.
And that's a great question. I know Kyle and I have talked a little bit about how to make that connection. And that's something that I think will be an ongoing conversation with our state associations and seeing how we can help that to happen. But Mark, that's a great point and definitely well stated. Let's see, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'll just kind of, because this is being recorded, if there is anybody who is watching this who hasn't yet connected with the RefReps team, you can contact Kyle at refreps.com, or as I call him, speed dial number 1. But it's Kyle at refreps.com, and he can set up any webinars with him and his team and you. So if you're listening to this and you haven't yet connected with them and you're interested, know that you don't this is not going to be a full-time job for you. It'll be something that will help you in your job. and really help to develop that next generation of officials. So any other questions for Kyle? Or Kyle, do you have any closing comments or thoughts?
I never shy away from a mic, but
Well, I know that. You know, I will say one of the things Kyle's been doing is he is serving on the program committee for Sports Officials Care. And as that group, which is a recent organization that grew out of the UMPS Care organization, Sports Officials Care is a group of professional officials and their leadership. And they're really going out and doing community work, doing game changer events where they go out and all hands on deck. They just did a Feed Our Starving Children out in Arizona. But one of the other things they do is an event where they teach kids how to officiate. They do these community game changers, and game on events are the ones that they're doing instruction. And the schools that they've been partnering with are because Kyle's recommending them through RefReps. So we're making some connections as far as Sports Officials Care, RefReps, just trying to get more young people involved in officiating and trying to figure out how to fill that void of 21 to 40 a few years from now. All right, Kyle, anything else? Last chance? All right, well, thank you all so much for your time and participation and attention tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can get you in touch with Kyle, or you can reach out to him directly. Braden and Nick from the RefReps team, thanks for being on with us as well. And to everybody from our state and local associations, thank you for everything that you do for your officials. And we look forward to seeing you for our next quarterly consortium in December. Have a great night and a good rest of your weekend. Or great rest of your week with the weekend ahead. Man, where's my head? Thank you all for everything you do.
thanks, Dana.
Thank you.